Tools required will be a 12, 13, and 17 millimeter standard wrench, plus a 5 millimeter and 6 millimeter Allen wrench. Okay, we're going to open up the box. This box has a double rack in it. Inside the box you have a few assembly components that are in the center, and there are 2 lower wheel chocks, and that's because this is a double rack. If it was a single rack, you would have one of these. Your rack arrives about 90% assembled. The only thing to assemble is the lower wheel chock, which is this piece here, and then there's a few bolts that hold that on and a few other accessories that I'll walk through with you. First, we're going to go ahead and take the zip ties off. And we can take the foam pieces off. There are 2 plastic bushings on the main front of the rack that look like this. You go ahead and take those off. They're just held in place by a rubber band. Set those to the side. Take the handle, which is this piece right here, and take it down until everything is parallel with the bar, and just kind of, it should hold itself into place, and rotate the whole rack sideways. This piece will kind of be loose right now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to install the lower wheel chock on these 4 holes towards the front of the bottom of the rack. The important thing here is that this piece, this lower wheel chock, will kind of be at the same angle as this bend in the rack. So if you've got it backwards, it's going to be pointing against this angle. You don't want that. Everything should be flowing at the same angle. We're going to open up our bag of assembly parts and bolts, and we're going to put those into a tray so that none of the parts get lost. Set that over to the side. There are 4 8 millimeter bolts and nuts provided with each rack. We're going to go ahead and use these parts to assemble the lower wheel chock. Simply line up the holes. The bolts go from the top down through the holes in the wheel chock, and you just tighten them down. So put all 4 of them in loosely first. I find it just a little bit easier to start with the top, and just loosely put those 2 in, finger tight, and then we'll go ahead and put in the bottom 2, and just finger tight. Using your 5 millimeter Allen wrench and a 13 millimeter standard wrench, you want to go ahead and tighten down all 4 of the bolts. You want them nice and firm, not so tight that you're stripping out the Allen head or crushing the metal, just nice and firm. The next thing we want to do is install the pop pin. The pop pin has the round ball on top, looks like that. It's going to go into the bottom of the handle mechanism here, and you'll find where it's received right there. I'm just going to go ahead and thread it in. Put it in finger tight. It should thread in a few times before it stops. You want to take a 12 millimeter wrench and snug that in. Okay, you'll see a little hole right here that's up towards the front of the rack. That's what the pop pin snaps into. Move the upper arm out of the way and slide this in, and it'll snap right in, and that'll lock it into position. Okay, next we're going to join the closure mechanism to the upper arm. So you'll just want to bring that around. You're going to see that there's a U-shaped bracket that's going to join to this side on the upper arm. The part you're going to need for this assembly is the 10 millimeter bolt, and you will see that this bolt comes with 2 pretty heavy duty washers, and the 10mm nut on the other side. So you'll want to disassemble all of these parts. And the first thing you do is you want to put the bolt, the head of the Allen bolt should be facing on the outside of the rack. That's going to go through, and you want to put the first washer in between the bracket and the tab on the upper arm. And before you push that bolt all the way through, you just want to kind of feel it barely starting to come out the other side, but you don't want it to penetrate through yet because you need to slide this next washer in between on the other side. And it'll just slide in like that, and then it'll slide through, so you have a washer on either side of this tab, and it creates a nice support around the bracket. I find that this really assembles the easiest if you lay it on its side like this, so that these washers aren't kind of falling out while you're trying to do this assembly. And then go ahead and hand tighten the nut on the other side. Next, you're going to need a 17mm wrench to tighten the nut and a 6mm Allen. So we'll go ahead and tighten that down. And this one doesn't have to be extremely tight. The more tension you put on the bolts, the tighter the whole mechanism will feel. So if you don't like how tight it feels, loosen your bolts up just a tiny bit. And it's kind of a combination of all of the pivot points that create the tension. So this is one that I would probably leave just a little bit looser, but still a little tension on there. Now your rack is fully assembled. I suggest you go through and check all your bolts, make sure none of them are loose. You also have a couple more parts. You have the plastic bushing and also your quick release clamp. And so there's 2 quick release clamps, 2 plastic bushings for each rack, and these will be used to install into the truck.